is Marissa Fenwick. I'm an Assistant Director and Career Consultant for the College of Engineering, CIT. I work with Chemie students and Civi students, and I also do employer relations for those populations as well as the Mellon College of Science.
And my name is Erin Thomas, and I'm on the CIT team as well. And today we're going to be talking to you about strategies for successful interviewing.
All of these slides are also going to be available after the presentation through Tartan Track in our documents library. So if you want to access any of the materials afterwards, you'll be able to do that too.
So what is the format of an on-campus interview? On-campus interviews, typically you'll be signing up for about a 30-minute time slot. Within that 30-minute time slot, we kind of have it broken down for you, the different steps of the interview. So first it usually begins with a little bit of small talk and greeting with the employer, and then it moves on to them asking you questions typically about your education, your previous work or research experience, and your career path, career goals, objectives, things like that. Towards the end of the interview, it'll kind of start to transition, and you'll have an opportunity to ask the employer questions that hopefully you prepared in advance. You want to have some questions to ask them, for sure. And then you want to close the interview strong and really thank the employer for their time. The two most important things that you need to know before an on-campus interview are yourself and the employer and the company in which you're interviewing with. In terms of knowing yourself, you definitely want to be able to articulate your own career goals and objectives and how this internship or full-time position is going to help you get there. You also want to be able to speak about your academic experience and how it is relative to the position in which you're applying. Additionally, you want to be prepared to give all the different kinds of examples. A lot of interviews today are behavioral based, so you want to be able to take the different projects and experiences you've had and work them into the questions the interviewer is asking. And you also really want to be able to talk about any unique experiences which will kind of give you an edge above other candidates. You definitely want to know your strengths. So a really great thing to do before an interview is to kind of come up with a list of your strengths. And as the interviewer asks you about different experiences or projects on your resume, you want to be able to integrate those strengths into the question. So when you're talking about a class project you did, you want to be able to say, oh, I did this class project in my chemical engineering class. From this project, I really gained X, Y, and Z skills. It's really great to work in the skills that you gain from your different experiences as you speak about them. With that said, you have to know your resume really well. Anything that is on your resume is up for grabs the interviewer could ask you about. So every single thing you have listed on there, you should be able to talk in depth for about 2 to 3 minutes about that experience and what you gained from it. It's all about taking the experiences on your resume and being able to articulate the tangible skills that you got from those different experiences. Even if a question doesn't seem open-ended, really try to continue the answer. They don't want to hear just a short yes or no, so really try to expand, draw out your answer, talk about those skills in which that experience gave you. And be prepared to talk about your strengths as well as your weaknesses. And one thing I will share, a lot of people will prepare one strength and one weakness. I walked into an interview and they asked me for 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses. So I was definitely thrown for a little bit of a loop, and you really need to, be able to think on your feet, and hopefully you'll prepare those in advance.
Okay, so the next thing you need to know, not just yourself, but also the person that you're talking with or the organization that you're interviewing with. So what you need to know about them. You need to know really their values, their mission, if anything has come up about them in recent news, if they've done something really big. Also, clients, products, basically you need to do your research. So as much as they're going to find information out about you from your resume, you kind of need to know a little bit more about them to be able to speak about that when you are in the interview. And how to know that is to attend information sessions. If they have information sessions here on campus, you can sign up for those through Tartan Track. The schedule is on Tartan Track under the events tab, but also obviously looking at their website. There's a lot of information that you can get. Usually you see on a website about us or home or wherever it is. There's information out there about that organization on their website. So do your homework and make sure you know about them before you go to interview. I used to be an employer, I used to be an interviewer, and one of the worst things that turned me off about about a candidate was if I said, so why would you like to work for our organization specifically? And they couldn't give me a good answer. well, I just really would like a job and this is kind of the field I want to be in, so that's why. That's not good enough. I want to know why you want to work for my organization, not just I need a job. So you really need to have your homework done and your research done. Also, you can use Vault, which is one of our resources that we provide through the CPDC. If you go on our website, it's under Jobs and Internships. You can find it under Vault Guides. It's really good. It tailors the information to what your interests are and what your preferences are. So once you input that information, it'll tailor the information to you so it's just relevant to you and what your interests are. And how to show that you know the company, that you know what their values are, their mission, goals. Demonstrate your knowledge and about the employer and the job in your responses. So you can work that in whenever you're answering questions. You can tailor them to be specific to that organization or to that position that you're interviewing for. Also, you want to give informed reasons for your interest in the employer and that job. Be specific. We can't say that enough. So tailor it to that organization, tailor it to that job as much as you possibly can. And also, you want to kind of come up with questions in advance, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail later. But you want to ask about the job, you want to ask about the organization, the corporate culture, and make sure they know what to say. You want to get a good response for them. So just as much as the company and the organization is interviewing you, this is also a chance for you to interview them. So asking the person, so why do you work here? What do you like about working here? What is the culture like? And if they give you sort of a general response like, well, it has good benefits and you know, it's a good company. If they're very generic in their response, that might tell you something about that person or about that organization. It sounds like they may not like it so much. It can be a negative as much as it can be a positive. So look for a good response from them as well. Okay, so how do you prepare for this interview? Practice, practice, practice. I don't like the term practice makes perfect. Has anybody ever heard that? Because there's not really a way to perfect an interview. Somebody's going to have something that they can improve upon. So I like to use the term practice makes permanent. The more you practice something, the better you get at it, right? If you play a sport, the more you practice, the better you get. If you play an instrument, the more you practice, the better you get at it. Interviewing is kind of the same. So we do mock interviews down in the CPDC. If you want to sign up for a mock interview with your career consultant, you're able to do that. We also have a mock job fair event coming up that we can talk about a little bit later, but that's the best way to do it, is to get more practice. So study your resume, as Erin just talked about. Know what's on your resume, be able to speak about your abilities and your experiences, and your strengths, as Erin also said. You're going to be responding in what's called a STAR format. It's the STAR technique. We're going to talk about what that means, what that acronym means, and how you can do that a little bit later. But you're going to want to think of specific examples. Basically, that's what STAR is. So you want to think of specific examples, specific projects, specific obstacles that you've had, things that really speak to your abilities and why you're a strong candidate. You're going to want to think of those in advance so that you can be able to give those in your responses. Again, we'll talk about it in more detail in just a minute. But you want to think about some commonly asked interview questions, which we have in the CPDC. We have a whole list of questions that you can look at that might be typically asked during an interview, and practice your answers, practice your examples in that STAR format. Organize each of your answers so that they're easy to understand. They want to be short, sweet, to the point. Simple, not too overly detailed. You don't want to go on and on. So if somebody says, so why do you want to work in the field of engineering? Well, I remember whenever I was 4 years old and I got a chemistry set from my grandparent and I really liked working with it. That's going a little too far. Short, sweet, to the point, concise. Make sure you give a good response, but don't go on and on and on and tell your life story. Make sense? Okay. So practice your answers to each question out loud with a friend, or again with us. Do a mock interview with us. Practice with a friend, a family member. We also have a good resource on our website that you can kind of videotape, and then you can kind of look back and see what you look like. That's kind of nerve-wracking, I know, but you can practice with any one of us. Again, a friend or a family member. The more you practice, the better you'll get at it. Each answer should be about 1 to 3 minutes in length. Again, you don't want to go on and on and on, but you want to be concise and you want to give the major points, highlight the major information that you want the employer to know. As I said before, we have mock interviews that you can use to practice with us. Any career consultant you can work with, and Impress is that resource that I was just talking about where you can kind of videotape yourself. It's available through Tartan Track, so you can go into Tartan Track and find it there. Okay, so as I said before, the STAR technique, this is what STAR stands for. Situation, task, action, and result. So anytime you're asked a behavioral-based question, and what a behavioral-based question is, tell me about a time when, or give me an example of, they're going to ask you specifically of an example or to give them a situation that you were in and how you handled it. So you're going to want to touch on these 4 points when you're giving a STAR response. The first thing you want to touch on is the situation. So was it in a class, was it a class project, or was it some sort of, I don't know, anything that you were doing, whatever the situation was, you kind of want to present it, give a little bit of detail, and then you're going to talk about your task in that situation, what you were tasked with, what you had to do. What action steps you took, and then what the end result was. Obviously, you don't want to give a negative example, right? A great example would be a negative that turned into a positive. So the situation was, I had to do this group project, one of our group members weren't carrying their weight, so I had to do X, Y, and Z, and the end result was we got a good grade. That's just as a very generic example, but you never want to say, well, the situation was we had this group project for class, and the one person didn't carry their weight, and so we just didn't do that part of the project, and we ended up failing. That's obviously not a good example, right? So you want to show the obstacle, but how you turned it into a positive. That's a strong example, okay? So think like the employer. What would you want to hear from a candidate? Again, as much as they're interviewing you, you can kind of interview them, but think in their sort of mind, like, what would be a good response? And that's a good way to get feedback, again, from us, family, friends. Think about what your example was. Think about how your response was and get some feedback on it to see, was this strong? Did I like what I said? Could I improve it a little bit more? So think about what they might want to hear. And then, again, use specific examples. Think of some stories. Think of things that stick out in your mind that really stand out as, yeah, that was kind of not such a great situation, but I turned it into a positive. Think of those ahead of time, and then it'll be like you're just storytelling in the interview. So it's not really, I have to think on my feet of an example. Think of some strong examples from your experiences. That's the best way to do it. So here are just some specifics that we can provide for you as far as an example of a STAR response. So tell me about a challenging situation you've encountered at Carnegie Mellon and describe how you handled it. There was this situation. My service organization was in danger of losing its charter at the university. Membership was down and funds were quite low. So the task. As fundraising chairperson, I was charged with the responsibility of increasing donations by 30%. Anytime you can quantify something, that's good. And in interviewing, quantify. The action steps that you took. In order to accomplish my goal, I initiated a door-to-door campaign off campus. All of the members were involved in this fundraising effort. And the end result was, thanks to our membership's dedication and participation, we increased donations by 37%, which is better than what your goal was, and kept our charter. See, so that's a perfect example. Something bad was happening, this is what you did, these are the action steps that you took, and it ended up being a positive result. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. All right, Erin.
All right, so this is just a short list of commonly asked interview questions, and I want to highlight just a few that students often fall victim to. And the first would be that common question, tell me about yourself. So what do employers really want to hear when they ask you that? They don't want to hear about your family, they don't want to hear about your pet, they don't want to hear about how you're having a really rough week and such sorority sisters getting on your nerves. What they really want to hear is why you are in this interview. They want to hear why you're here. They want to hear what your career direction is, what your passion is in the field, and what kind of brought you into the seat that you're in at that moment. So that's something that you really want to have prepared in advance, and you don't just want to go off the cuff. So kind of think about that as you're starting to prepare for your interview, and it really helps to often practice that in a mirror beforehand. I know it sounds goofy, but a couple other ones. One that says, give me an example of a specific job condition, task, or assignment that was particularly displeasing. They don't want to hear about something that was really, really awful. They want to hear about a situation that maybe wasn't the best, but then you kind of remedied. So for example, Marissa gave the one of, oh, we had a group member that wasn't pulling our weight, but then we did X, Y, and Z to kind of fix the situation. So that's another really good way to kind of think about that. They want to hear about maybe a challenge or a displeasing situation, but they also want to hear how you kind of turned it around and were able to fix the situation. Another one is, as I mentioned earlier, your strengths and weaknesses. You don't want to give the generic weakness. I think we all know what that is. The generic weakness answer is, oh, I'm a perfectionist. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear some genuine weaknesses and what you're doing to kind of turn your weaknesses around. So if I said a genuine weakness, I'd say, project delegation is something that I have a hard time doing. I have a hard time assigning, certain group members different parts of the project. But I'm really working with people. I'm listening to what they're interested in, listening to kind of what they want to take the reins on and why they think they should have that part. And we're working together to kind of get the project done and divide the work evenly. So that would be an example of a weakness and kind of what you're doing to work on that weakness. And you can find a lot of these on our website as well, along with like hundreds of other questions. If you do use the Impress system, we have a lot more practice interview questions for you as well.
One I wanted to point out is the why should I hire you, right? That's kind of a very general, generic question, but they're expecting a specific response. So something you don't want to say, like Erin was saying, cliched or generic responses you never want to give. You never want to say, well, I'm a really hard worker and I have a strong work ethic, and everybody says that. So as a previous recruiter, I want to hear from you. I have all these candidates. Why should I pick you instead of all of them? What is so special about you? So this is really your opportunity to market yourself and say why you're better than those other candidates, because chances are they're going to have the same education background as you. They're probably going to have similar projects. They may have similar leadership experiences, but you have to really tell this employer why they should pick you over everybody else. So that's really important to practice. Did anybody ever hear of like a 30-second elevator pitch, or like your 30-second commercial? It's really saying why you're a strong candidate in 30 seconds. So we also have opportunities to practice that through the CPDC, and that's kind of response you're going to want to give to that answer, or to that question, why should I hire you?
Alright, so here's just a few more tips for interview success. You definitely want to be on time, you want to be well groomed, well prepared, and one thing I will say is you really want to show enthusiasm to some degree for the position. We've had employers give feedback where they'll say, oh, I just interviewed such and such student, and they were so serious the whole time that when they left and went out the door, I wasn't really sure if they wanted the position. So a really good thing to do, you don't want to be overly too, over the top, fake enthusiastic, but you definitely want to smile, make engaging eye contact, show that you're interested. And when you leave that interview, say, I really think I might be a great fit for this. I thank you for your consideration. I can't wait to hear from you. And show that you really do want that position, if you want the position. So how do I close the interview? I kind of touched on this a little bit. You definitely want to have some good questions to ask the interviewer. I recommend preparing a few in advance. And if other ones come up during the interview, you can jot them down. You definitely want to close the interview strong. So before you close the interview strong, you ask your questions. You typically ask what the timeline is for hearing back. That's a really good thing to ask as well. And then as you close the interview strong, you say a phrase kind of like I just gave an example of. I really think I could be a good fit for this position. I thank you for your time. I really look forward to hearing from you. And then make sure you send a follow-up thank you note as well.
One of the things that I think is important to remember is to know who's making the next move. How many people have applied for a job and then they're waiting, and they don't know, was I supposed to follow up with this person, or were they supposed to get back with me? And you're kind of like, I'm wondering what to do. This is a perfect question to ask the person that you're talking with. This can be your last question that you ask them, in fact. I strongly suggest that. Can you please outline the time frame and the next steps in the process for me? So if they say, okay, well, we have this many candidates, we're wrapping up interviews within 2 weeks, we'll get back to you in 14 to 21 business days or whatever it is. So that are you supposed to follow up with them? Are they supposed to follow up with you? And if they don't give you that time frame, make sure you ask for it, so that if they don't get back to you in that time frame, it is perfectly acceptable for you to then follow up with them and say, hi, my name is Marissa Fenwick. I interviewed with Bill Jones on this date for this position. I haven't heard anything. He told me that I would hear back within this certain time frame, and I just wanted to follow up. I'm really interested in the position in your organization, and just wanted to see if I could provide you with any other information at this point. It never hurts to follow up. Again, they may have tons of candidates. That might be the one thing that sets you apart from others. So make sure you get that time frame. Know if they're going to follow up with you, or if you're to follow up with them, and follow suit. Okay? All right, so some questions to ask. That one that I just talked about, asking what next steps are in the process, I think that's a huge one, so that you know who's going to do what, or who's supposed to do what, and make sure you're following through on what the recruiter said. One good question too is, what do you see as the greatest challenge in this position? Again, that's a good way for you to sort of flip the script and ask the interviewer about the job. If they have a really negative response, that might say something to you. But if they have a positive response and it sounds like a really interesting challenge that you would like to tackle, that would be a great thing for you to get the position and be able to do that. What are your company's future plans for growth is always a good one. If they really don't have any plans, you're wondering if they're going to stay stagnant, but if they have a lot of things going on, chances are that means good things for the company. What is the length and structure of the training program? What career paths have other new employees generally followed? You want to see about other opportunities. You don't just want to come in at that one position. You kind of want to grow, so you want to see what opportunities exist. What do you like most about working for this company? That was one of my favorite questions as a recruiter because one, it showed the candidate was interested in me personally, and also it's a great opportunity for you to interview them and hear either a positive or negative response. But asking them what they like most about working for the company and why they stay is a great question. And then what characteristics best describe the individuals who are successful in this position? That's another one that you can ask. We have a list, as Erin said before. You can read our interviewing success guide on our website under career resources. All right, so following up, this is important. You must follow up with every person that you interview with. That might sound taxing, that might sound very time consuming, but that might make the difference between you and that other candidate. You should follow up within 24 hours, at the very latest within 48 hours. People always ask, or people would ask me in the past, should I send a note? You know, is that kind of showing a nice personal touch, or should I do an email? With the digital age nowadays, I think it's perfectly acceptable to send an email because it's quicker. So I would send a follow-up email, thanking them, being very gracious, and just re-expressing your interest in the position, in the organization, thanking them for their time and consideration. Be very gracious. Make sure you keep records of, like I said, what the timeline is, who's to follow up with you, and stick with that. And also evaluate your performance and talk with your career consultant. So think about how you did. Kind of look back and say, oh, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have done that differently. And you can talk with us about that, just to have us as a sounding board to get our feedback as well. All right, so how do recruiters choose candidates? Every company's different, every organization's different, every recruiter's different. People are gonna have their own personal styles and preferences. So you can't really, there's no magic, formula to doing it right for every company and every person. But these are some factors that most employers look for. So do you have professional goals? Are you driven? Are you motivated? Would you be a good fit for that position? Would you be a good fit for that organization? Does your major fit with what you want to pursue as far as this position or your career? Do you have good oral and written communication skills? Also, nonverbals are really important. Eye contact, not jittering or fidgeting when you're in the interview. Nonverbals are just as important as verbal communication. Personality and appearance, as Erin said, you don't want to be too over the top, but you want to show enthusiasm, you want to show interest, and you want to present yourself professionally with your appearance, being very well groomed. Highlighting, your internship and previous work experience. They're going to really rely on what do you bring to the table. So what experiences do you have that we could benefit from if we hire you for this position? Any project that you worked on, your technical knowledge, especially if you're going to be in a technical type of position, that's key. GPA, some people are really driven by this, others are not, but it's important to have a strong GPA that's just going to set you up for more success. And obviously your work status, if you need, sponsorship and things like that, those are some things to work out and think about before you're going into the application. Most companies will let you know what those are if that's an issue. But those are some selection factors that recruiters kind of look at when they're picking the candidate that they're going to choose for the job.
Just a few more, kind of continues on
Okay,
two slides.
so I already said a couple of
highlighted
things. So genuine interest in that specific employer and that position, as I talked about before, showing enthusiasm and confidence, showing initiative, that you're creative, you're innovative, you display leadership, and you have a strong work ethic, and again, your skill set is specific to what they want you to do in that specific position.
So punchy. Okay. Dress for success. All right. Please, please, please wear a suit. I can't stress that enough. Unless you are interviewing with Abercrombie & Fitch or they say otherwise, please wear a suit. Also, with that said, please wear a suit to the upcoming EOC. It is always better to be overdressed than underdressed. I get it. I know a lot of tech companies are very laid back in their day-to-day, but they want to see you in a suit. You want to impress these companies. You want to make an impact, and the suit will help you stand out. So please consider that as you get ready for your interview. So what other things should I know about interviewing? Ethics are huge. So you must attend all interviews that you schedule on campus. You must be on time for these interviews. If for some reason you decide that you can no longer attend an interview you signed up for, you must call the Career Center and let us know within 24 hours in advance. Even if something comes up, you get the stomach flu and you really can't attend and it's less than 24 hours, still please let us know and be prepared to write your interviewer an apology note. Additionally, when you're going through the interview, present all of your qualifications in a really truthful manner. I know a lot of, especially engineers, will have all types of programs on there, C++, all sorts of things on your resume. Be honest about your depth of knowledge with those different types of programs. We always say if you lie about something on your resume, they're not going to find out that day. They may not find out next week. But if you start working at that company, it will most likely come out that you were a little bit untruthful about your qualifications. So that's something definitely to keep in mind. Additionally, honor all agreements with on-site interviews. If you sign up for an on-site interview, they're usually paying for you to fly out there. They're paying for your hotel and your meals. So if for some reason you decide that you don't want to go on that site visit, you need to let them know as soon as possible. And also with that said, when you do accept an offer, cease interviewing for all other companies. And you'll send a note to them, say thank you for your time, I really appreciated interviewing and making it to this point, and just let them know I have already accepted another offer at this point in time.
So we have a specific offer policy set in place for Carnegie Mellon that students and employers are to abide by. And so let's say if you did an internship at an organization this past summer and they're going to be offering you a full-time job for when you graduate. If they give you a full-time offer, you had the internship, you as the student have the right to wait to decide until November 1st, if it's in the fall, okay? To respond to an offer without pressure, to respond on an earlier date. Some employers might try to push you, but again, this is our policy, so you can rely on this. This can be your crutch and say, well, there's an offer policy set in place that I have until November 1st. If I was an intern with you this past summer and you're offering me a full-time position, I have until November 1st to either accept it or decline it, okay? So use these policies to your advantage. If you didn't intern with the company in the summertime and you're just talking with them during fall interviews, they have to give you until December 1st to respond to an offer, okay? If you are interviewing, though, after December 1st, you have to be given at least 3 weeks to respond, which is it's a good time frame. Does this make sense to everybody? We kind of try to follow it in order. So if you're interviewing before December 1st during the fall, you have till December 1st to make your decision. If the interview happens after December 1st, you have 3 weeks after the offer is given to you to decide whether to accept or decline. And then if it's happening in the spring, so if you interview with an organization in the spring, it's the 3-week policy. So once they give you an offer, you have 3 weeks to either accept it or decline it. And they can't pressure you to do it before then. Okay, does that make sense? And again, if you are feeling pressure from an employer, you can always rely, this is on our website, it's very clearly stated, but this is our policy that employers are to abide by. Did you have a question?
So this is only for companies that have a relationship with CMU, right? Or no?
I mean, if they're recruiting here, they probably already have a relationship with
If they're
us.
not, though.
But if they're not recruiting here, that's a good question. Honestly, you would kind of have to use your discretion. If they're asking you, if they give you an offer today and they ask you to respond tomorrow, I think that's an unrealistic timeline. So I would think anything within reason. I think a couple weeks is a perfectly acceptable time frame. But actually, I think that that's something that we should really find out because we have a lot of employers that we work with. But if they don't recruit through us, through Tartan Trek, we don't have a relationship with them, I'd be interested to find out if we have to hold them to that policy or not. Because if they don't work with us, we might not have to hold them to it necessarily. So I'll actually get your information and follow up with you and give you a response. Okay?
Sure, I can. Okay. All right, so are you getting interviews but not getting offers? One thing to really keep in mind is just to be patient. Companies have all different timelines. I know college applications and admissions, it's kind of on this set timeline of when you're supposed to find out. But for interviewing for internships and full-time, they can go on any timeline that they would like to. So just keep that in mind. As Marissa stated earlier, if they are not following up with you in the timeline that they gave, Definitely. Send them an email and just say, hey, I'm still really interested in this position. I just wondering where you were in your recruitment process and when I'll be hearing the next update. So that's definitely a good thing to do, follow up. Another thing that I recommend is make a spreadsheet of the dates that you are applying to certain positions, the dates you hear back, the dates they say you should hear back. That way you kind of all have it on paper. And if you don't hear back by the time that you should, you can look back on your spreadsheet and just send them an email and say, you know, I applied on this date. I said I'd hear back in 2 weeks. However, I know sometimes it takes a little longer. I was wondering if you could just give me an update of where you are in the process. Additionally, you want to come into the Career Center. Sometimes on-campus interviewers, they will leave feedback. If they do that, you can come in, make an appointment with a career consultant, and they will go over that feedback with you. And additionally, if you're really not getting a lot of, you're not hearing back from who you're interviewing with, come on into the Career Center. We can help kind of go over how you've been interviewing. If you're struggling in any certain area or any certain question you think you're having trouble with, we can kind of go through that with you and help kind of customize your strategy. Impress is a really great resource as well. I definitely recommend using Impress, especially if you have a Skype interview. Impress is really cool. You can set it up on your home computer with your webcam. You can kind of plug in the questions that you want to practice. It'll feed you the question, it'll time you saying your answer, and then you can watch it all back. And that's really helpful, not only for on-campus, but especially for Skype interviews.
Does Impress work in Maps?
Yeah.
I tried it.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you have, okay.
I'll write that down and ask our
Yeah.
technology guy to make sure that it is compatible.
I believe that it is, but you may have to have like a certain like, you know, if you have a certain virus protector in or anything like that, I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll
tried it
find
for
out.
some reason.
You try different browsers too.
I just couldn't move on.
Okay, I'll make note of that.
All right, well, thank you for letting us know. Any other questions? No? Okay. And also in the Career Center, if for some reason you are having issues with Impress, we do have mock interviews as well. So you can definitely come in. Also, the week before the upcoming EOC, we have what's called Resume Blitz every afternoon from 1 to 4. If you want to come into the Career Center and practice your little 30-second elevator pitch, that's a really great time to do so, and we can give you feedback right away in person as well.
All right, so you've done all this work, you've gotten your resume, you've been selected for interviews, you interviewed, you followed all the procedures and the follow-up and the timelines, and you get the offer. Yay, that's what it's all about, right? So congratulations on getting an offer. If you have several offers, we have a lot of students that come in and say, I have these 3 offers and I'm not really sure what to do. That's a good problem to have. So now that you have them, you have to think about the deadlines, obviously. So if one employer is giving you one deadline and another is giving you a different one, it's kind of up to you to decide. And I know a lot of students come to us and say, I don't know whether to take this one, or I'm waiting to hear back from this person, so I don't know what I should do. That's kind of your call. It's really, what company do you want the most? What opportunity are you most interested in? You know, you're all grown-ups, so we really can't tell you like, okay, pick this one and it's gonna work out for you. If we had a magic 8-ball, trust me, we'd be making a lot more money and not working here if we could tell everybody what's gonna happen and what's meant to be. But again, you have to find what the best fit is for you. So make sure you're aware of those deadlines so that you can let people know. And as Aaron mentioned before with ethics, you want to get back to people, you want to follow up, you never want to burn a bridge. Everybody hear that term? So you never want to say to a company, oh, I accept the job, and then, no, I'm not going to take it, because you might be interested in a position with that organization later on, but chances are that they'll have in their recruiting system your name flagged, accepted an offer, then rejected it after the fact, do not consider for future hiring. So that's kind of what burning your bridges. You never want to do that. So make sure you're honest and ethical and you follow those deadlines. If you have questions about negotiating, a lot of students come in and talk with us about this. Yes, I have these 3 offers. This one is more money, but this one is a better benefits package, and this one is really in the location that I want to be. Those are all factors to consider. So if you have questions about negotiating or any of these things, come in and talk to us. That's what we're here for. And once you have confirmed that internship or full-time job, any of your post-graduation plans, we love to get that information so that we can share it with future students. For example, we have statistics right now for every graduating class by major on where the company is, city, state, country, what the name of the company is and the person's job title, and then salary information, so that we can provide that to current students like you looking for opportunities perhaps at those same organizations, so that you can see where CMU students are ending up, okay? And we'd love to hear that you do well, because that's why you go to school, is to get a good job or move on to a good grad school and begin your career, right? So we'd love to hear those. All right, so just some final wrap-up thoughts here. As we said before, be confident in your abilities. Obviously, you're a good student, you're a Carnegie Mellon, that says something, but that's not necessarily enough. You have to market yourself and why you are an individual and stand out, again, against your competition. Always be positive. You never want to, as I said before, just rely on the negative. Focus on negatives that turned into positives. You never want to bash anybody either, so you want to have that positive light about you the whole time. Be aware of your communication, verbal, nonverbal, your body language, as I mentioned before. Try to have fun. That sounds kind of funny, like everybody thinks interviewing is so nerve-wracking. But really, if you have those star examples that we talked about, if you have some specific examples to talk about to really tell your story, it shouldn't be that nerve-wracking. You're just kind of talking about yourself, retelling your story. So try to have fun with it and enjoy it. And as I said before, practice makes permanent. So practice with friends, practice with family, practice with us, use and press. Whatever you need to do, the more you practice, chances are the better you'll get at it and the more offers you'll get, which again is the best problem to have, so that you can pick the job that you really want. Okay? So are there any questions while we still have the group here that you want to ask? Yes?
Yeah, about the follow-up process. So what if I didn't got any response from the follow-up, or I got some general response like, it's nice to meet you, real glad to know, but
You haven't heard anything?
Yeah.
So the question was about follow-up specifically. So if you get a generic response saying, it was nice meeting you, we'll follow up with you, they don't give a time frame. Again, in the interview, you should ask at the end, what is the time frame? So that you know when to expect that we'll be getting back to you. Is it 2 weeks? Is it 2 months? Whatever it is, ask in the interview so you have that date. And then once it's past that date, or if they don't give a date, I would say a couple weeks is common business practice, common business courtesy, so to speak. Again, whenever you contact that person, asking for a business card at the end of the interview is also great too, because then you have that person's name, their email, their phone number, and you can get in touch with them directly. So you can follow up with them and say, hi, my name's Marissa Fenwick. I interviewed with you for the blah, blah, blah position on this date. I received an email saying that you'd be in touch with me. I just wanted to follow up and see what your time frame was, or if there are any updates in the process. Okay?
yeah, because in TUC they usually don't provide a date. There's one guy who said he will call me in the evening. But
Mm-hmm. Well, a job fair is different. I think a job fair is totally different. But when you're in an interview one-on-one with somebody, that's a good
Yeah,
point too. He was talking about the TOC, the Technical Opportunities Conference that happens in the fall. If you're talking with recruiters, you'll probably talk with a lot of recruiters. They talk with a lot of candidates. So the terms are kind of different than in a one-on-one interview. If they say we'll get back to you and they don't, I would again give them a couple weeks and then follow up with them. Chances are they'll have business cards at the career fair. Grab a business card so that you have their name and contact info. Okay? Any other questions? Anything else? Okay, well again, we're in the CPDC downstairs on the lower level of the UC. You can log into Tartan Track to schedule an appointment with career consultants that are specific to your college, your major. If you two ladies that had the issues would come up, I'd like to get your email addresses so that I can follow up with you personally and get responses to those questions. Okay, thank you everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening.